It's time for the MotoAmerica AMA FIM North American Road Race Championship. This round is MotoAmerica Superbikes at Pittsburgh from Wampum, Pennsylvania, at the spectacular Pittsburgh International Race Complex, as we're getting ready for Supersport, race number 1 of our 7th round of the season here in MotoAmerica competition, and it promises to be an awesome race. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the broadcast. I'm Greg White, standing alongside two-time national champ Jason Pridmore. Now, Jason, the talk of the town, of course, is Xavi Forés. Xavi Forés is leading this championship, but he had kind of a rough weekend last time we were out at Brainerd International Raceway.
Yeah, it was a place where he kept on trying to get better, and on Sunday he actually did recover a little bit, but it was amazing to not see him on the podium at all. But he's getting really close to wrapping up this first championship right now.
Of course, special livery for Xavi Forés today at this race. But Jason, when we look at Xavi Forés as this championship starts to wind down, he only really needs 66 points accumulated really to wrap up this championship.
Yeah, I mean, if he leaves here 100 points up, he's going to win the championship. So, but I mean, like right now for Xavi, he's got so much experience. He's just focusing on one thing, and that's this race right now, and that's what he's got to do. Another new track for him. Got a little extra motivation with his wife and his newborn daughter here in Pittsburgh with him also. So he's going to be ready to go. It's going to be business as usual for Xavi today and get those points and go from there.
And earlier this weekend, we had a chance to talk to Xavi about his first trip to pit race and find out how things are going.
Well, Brainerd was super tough for me. We expect that, but honestly, this weekend I am feeling good on the bike, and it's important for me to stay on the top, especially because I like to win races, and I have a match ball to win the championship this weekend, and also because my deal with the team is to jump on the superbike for the last couple of rounds. So I'm looking forward to win the championship and try and test with the B4. I think I can shoot well on that bike, and it's going to be good fun to finish the season in a high. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah, and Greg, to see him on that superbike, on that V4 would be amazing, especially with all of his World Superbike experience.
Yeah, and World Endurance as well for Xavi Forés. Let's get down to the third member of our broadcast team who is down underneath the sunshine on the grid, Hannah Lopa.
For Stefano Mesa, he's certainly been making consistent progress, a frequent podium finisher, but still looking for that first win of the season. Stefano, what is it going to take for this weekend to be the weekend? You've been fast all weekend so far. What's working well for you?
Yeah, definitely. The Tyler's team gave me a great bike all weekend. We've been on point with it, and we've been doing steady changes with Seki over in Argentina, and we've been applying it, you know. So my hat's off to Mike, Will, Steven, all the team for giving me a great bike, and I think it's just going to take to be there at the end. You know, it's going to be a long race. It's a very technical track, so I think it's going to be a fight till the end with all these boys. So hopefully we can be there at the end and take the W.
You mentioned Seki, your data engineer, is in Argentina this weekend. How has that been working with him remotely? Has it slowed you down at all?
No, not really. It's been a little challenging, you know, because it takes a little longer, but we've gotten things going. Mike over here has been applying the things to the bike, so we got the bike working very good. I think the best we've had it worked all year, so stoked for the race, and hopefully we can give some good results.
All hands on deck for Stefano Mesa, and he is ready for the challenge ahead.
Yeah, and he's right. It is a technical racetrack, and so that can be one of two ways here at Pit Race, Jason, because it's got so many corners and it's up and down. Anything could happen. Tell us about it.
It is such a good track. That turn 1 is very tricky. Blind entry up over the top of a hill. 3rd gear on these bikes. Then they're going to go up to probably 4th, 5th gear down that back straightaway. Back a couple for turn 3 and 4 on the way down to 5. Super steep. Back up that hill out of 6 into those famous S's that we've seen here at Pittsburgh. So once you get to turn 12, it's back up another hill, Greg, into a very technical turn 14, through that fast kink into the new chicane that has been redesigned for this race this weekend, and then off to turn 17. You can draft to the line here, although on these bikes it might be a little harder, but I still think that it could be done.
Josh Hayes for president. Boy, that's something else right there. As we look at the number 4, Josh Hayes, he's second in this championship. He's got to put Xavi Forés behind him to keep his hopes alive.
We're looking then at Josh Hayes down here on the grid. I'm in the center of the second row of the grid. And I've got to tell you, it's always quite interesting for me being down on the grid, just seeing how different riders react. On my left-hand side, Xavi Forés looking as cool as a cucumber. You wouldn't think that he's literally got one hand on the Supersport trophy. A super focused Teague Hobbs, who literally since coming back from his little bathroom break hasn't even blinked. He's just looking straight down into turn one. And Stefano Mesa, who's celebrating his birthday today, all smiles. And as we've just seen already talking to Hannah. Just on my right-hand side, Jake Lewis, we spoke to him during Mike on the mic. He is super relaxed, super pumped, and as he said, he's got nothing to lose. He's not in this championship fight. He wants to get on the podium for the Disrupt Racing. Josh Hayes, the most successful rider in AMA history, and of course, just rounding out row number 2, you can see just across here, Tyler Scott on the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki. Back on row number 3 is Anthony Mazziato. He's the 7th rider within about 0.6 or 0.7 of a second on the grid. So is arguably one of the closest Supersport grids that we've had. 4 manufacturers within about half a second. Greg, Roger, I know you're excited for this one. I've got to clear the grid, so I'm going to hand back to you. But yeah, it's going to be exciting. You can feel the tension down here, but it's going to be a good one.
Well, I think to borrow a phrase we might hear Michael say, it's going to be a cracker. This is going to be an absolutely amazing race, Roger.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, just going by the lap times and how close everybody is, and then also, you know, these riders, they don't want Xavi to get the title early. You don't want your competitor to lock up the championship a couple races early. And so all these guys are going to be trying their best to try to extend this as long as possible. You know, it's going to be hard to beat him overall, but you don't want them to get it a couple races early.
Yep.
So early where they move out of your class. I mean, that you just, as a rider, and, you know, you're competitive, and you don't want that to happen.
Absolutely. And talking with Tony Romo from Dunlop, this track it isn't as abrasive as a Brainerd or some other spots, but it is relatively abrasive. It's grippy, but it's abrasive. Just looking at the tires, we've got everybody is except one is running well, everybody's on the R3 rear. Most people are either on the 3 or the 0 on the front. Xavi Forés has gone with the 5 on the front, completely opposite of everybody else, going with a much harder tire in the front than the others.
And we've seen him this year be really aggressive on the brakes going into a lot of the corners. We've seen him at Road Atlanta, headed into turn 10 there, how good he was on the brakes. So maybe he likes that little stiffness as on the brakes and getting in there, and for him gives him more comfort.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You know, that the harder the compound, it's not just that it has more durability. It also has more stiffness, as Roger said. So it can just give you a little bit different feel. Maybe that's what you want right now. For the guys that are outside of this top 7, they've got some tough duty. I mean, David Anthony started 8th, will start 8th, and he's a big chunk of time back. So it's going to be fascinating to see what unfolds here with this top 7. Anthony Mazziato in 7th, Stefano Mesa up top, and huge talent filling out the gaps in between. It's time for us to go racing for Supersport Race 1 here at Pit Race for MotoAmerica's Superbikes at Pittsburgh. Again, presented by Steel Commander Corp.
Supersport coverage is brought to you by Dunlop, the official tire of the MotoAmerica Championship Series. By Steel Commander Corp, a leading steel building manufacturer offering expertise, innovation, and a dedication to quality. And by Geico Motorcycle. Visit geico.com to see how easy covering your ride can be.
Welcome back to Pittsburgh International Race Complex. We are just moments away from Supersport Race 1. And for Jake Lewis, filling in for the remainder of the season in this class wasn't in the cards. But as with Corey Ventura out injured, Jake has been making slow and steady progress with the Disrupt Racing team. And I spoke to him just moments ago on the grid. And he told me that, you know, he's been closer to the front this weekend than he has all season so far on this motorcycle. And little by little, they're just making small refinements to the motorcycle that's got him feeling so much more comfortable that he thinks he really has the pace to run at the front and potentially, for the first time in this class this season, win this race. So only time will tell, guys.
Well, it's going to be interesting on tire choice as well, because, Jay, the front row and actually in the second row, just a variety of tire choices in terms of tires and the stiffness, 0, R3, R5s, but Mesa on pole, Teague Hobbs with a great run ahead of Xavi Forés on the front row.
Jake Lewis, Josh Hayes, and Ty Scott going to be there in row 2. Mazziato, Dave Anthony, and Hayden Schultz. Good to see Hayden Schultz, one of our Twins Cup riders there. Desaney LaRoche and Joe Lamondre Jr., another guy we've seen come from Junior Cup to Twins. Jagalov, Soltis, Holt, Owen Williams, Inkowski, and Kano. Joe Ullman, Davis, Pappas, Tropkov, Blockall, and Seethauer. And then we got Ferguson, Yelton, Hopkins, Big Field, Craig, Murphy, Richardson, and Forsyth. A little further back, Beamer, Booth, Horney, and Mallory Dobbs. So another huge field here at Pittsburgh. Really, really well attended raid for the races. When I came in here yesterday morning, I couldn't believe how far out people were parking just to have some pit space here.
Yeah, and there's tons of fans as well at pit race as we get set for a 16-lap affair in Supersport race number 1. Stefano Mesa, left side of your screen, the 37 Tytler Cycle Kawasaki with the revs up. Lights are off and we're going racing. The tricky turn number 1 awaits.
Ty Scott
on the inside on the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki got an awesome launch, but Mesa chops him off. But Xavi Forés looks like he's got to contest for the lead, but it's going to be Mesa. Down the hill they go. And now it's going to be a braking duel to see who is going to have the lead. Is it the 12 of Xavi Forés? He takes the spot. So the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati entrant Xavi Forés has it for the moment. Mesa trying to get some drive. Side by side they go down to the bottom of the hill. Mesa's going to hold on or steal the position. So there goes Stefano Mesa.
That is a big committed move from the 37, but Greg, this is where he is fast. Through these next section of S's as they roll off into turn 7, Mesa all weekend long has been incredibly good through this section. So he wanted to get to the front, try to spread this field out. He's had some pace. Yesterday, he was 4/10 up or 5/10 up, I believe, Greg, after first qualifying, and you can see what it's doing. Forrest is going with him, and he's generally just starting to pull away from those M4 X-Star Suzukis just behind. Ty Scott had an incredible start from row 2, but you can see now Teague Hobbs looks like he's gotten through as we go back further through the field. These two guys are making a little bit of a breakaway, and this was not what I was expecting to see. I thought we'd see 6-7 bikes at this point just completely locked together.
Well, once we get onto the front straightaway, the chicane can close some people up. Look at Mesa sideways through the chicane, very rhythmic as I was watching him through practice and qualifying as Mesa has a look over his left shoulder to see who's joined the party. Back in the field, Josh Hayes looks like he was trying to make a move, and he does, so looks like Hayes is going to get around Jake Lewis for a position in this championship, Jay. Keep in mind that for Stefano Mesa, he's 100 points behind Xavi Forés in the title fight, with Xavi Forés looking at every point available for him. They still have this race plus 5 more to go in the season as Xavi Forés trying to wrap up this championship early. We heard him talk about it, Jay, at the beginning of the show, that if he wraps up the championship, he's going to have an opportunity to get on Superbike and be teammates with Josh Aaron. However, in speaking with Xavi about that earlier today, he told me, look, if I get to the next race, if we get to Coda and I'm really close, if it's really just a few points, they're going to go ahead and put him on that motorcycle before he wraps his championship up. So Forés, with a look over his shoulder, is definitely thinking about race wins, as he told us, but he's also got the championship in mind.
Yeah, and that's just the thing right now, is he has a look over, and he's got to beat the guy in front of him, because the guy in front of him is still mathematically can do something. So what it's up to Xavi to just keep doing what he's doing. He's going to see that Mesa has stretched it out to where the guys behind can't quite get to that pace. 48.9 from a standing start for these two leaders at the front. And you can see here, Teague Hobbs, Ty Scott, Josh Hayes. Josh Hayes momentarily had Jake Lewis up alongside of him going up, down the hill, down into turn 1. And as they went up the little hill, Hayes just let the lever off and carried more speed through the top. So Hayes on the mission right now to try to get past these two Suzukis directly in front of him. Expect a similar move, Greg, in this, after they come out of this chicane into this next right-hander. If he can get close enough, looks like Josh maybe missed a gear on the exit there, but you can see how much he closes up on the back of them, and so has Jake Lewis. Jake Lewis is now closing in on the back of all 3 of them.
So Teague Hobbs will look over his shoulder. He's the 79 on that Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki. That is the next generation GSXR 750 as Ty Scott is going to go up the inside of his teammate, and he'll take over that position. So Ty Scott, the number 70, moves into 3rd place. There's your leader, Mesa, on that Tytler Cycle Kawasaki ZX6R. just ahead of Xavi Forés. Forés keeps having to look around, assessing the situation as to how much he needs to push. And it might be a case for Xavi where he's going, okay, look, if we can maintain this gap, Jay, then why don't I just hang behind Mesa for a while and then see what I have at the end of the race to fight with.
And we've seen him do that in the past. And you can see the Ducati's much tighter line on the exit of turn 5. He has another look over his shoulder. So really, it's one of those things where he doesn't want to fall back into the clutches of this battle that's going to be raging behind him. Mesa has just looked like he's had the pace all weekend to me. Watching yesterday's practice sessions and qualifying, Mesa just looked super comfortable running the laps he did. 43.5 the first sector for the first two, 43.7. However, Ty Scott, 43.4. So he is capable of going through this first sector with those guys, but now he's got to bridge that gap. As you can see also, Mazziata now on the 23 has closed the gap to the back of Jake Lewis and Josh Hayes. Local rider here. Has been expecting some good things from Mazziata as we've seen in the past. He goes really well here at Pittsburgh. Now he's on the back of them as well. See, get a look at Dave Anthony. And it looked like just behind David Anthony, Hayden Schultz.
We're here at pit race about 6 hours or so from the East Coast, but with Anthony Mazziata on the Northeast Cycle Outlet Racing. He's from New Jersey, so a lot of riders who ride New Jersey will also kind of put pit race on their schedule for races or track days. There's a few tracks here on the east side of the country, and they kind of keep it local. But we have Mesa, who comes across the stripe, completes another lap. It's Ty Scott with the fastest lap of the race at a 1:46.164. So just a couple tenths of a second. Ty Scott in third place is taken out of your race leaders, the 37 and the 12, Xavi Forés.
Yeah, and seeing that for Ty Scott, we've seen him. He's coming off a big win that second race at Brainerd, where he had into a big battle with Josh Hayes. So he's got the confidence of knowing that he can run at the front. And we've really started to see this GSXR 750 get to the point where it's getting a lot more competitive in this class. I mean, it's hard to believe, Greg. I believe it's only won 2 races since its introduction last year in the series. They've both been by this young man here. Ty Scott won at MotoAmerica last season in that battle with Herron, and he's coming back now trying to get to the front with these guys. All three, again, 43.6s in that first split for all three of the top 3 guys. So Ty Scott pulling away a little bit from that group behind, trying his best to close this gap to these two in front.
Looking at Teague Hobbs and Josh Hayes, my thoughts are to the front. Stefano Mesa on the 37, who leads this, and he looks comfortable, Hannah.
He is, Greg, and Stefano is a guy that's always pretty calm and collected, but he seemed particularly at ease when I was talking to him a little bit earlier, and I think that's truly a testament to how well the Tytler's team has prepared this motorcycle. He told me they made some drastic changes to the chassis at Brainerd in order to get that confidence that he was looking for, and after some valving changes on the front to the forks to kind of deal with that chatter we've heard him talk about so many times throughout this season, he's definitely feeling more comfortable, and it's showing not only off the track, but on the track right now as well. Not to mention, I'm sure it'd feel pretty good to get a race win on your birthday, because today is Stefano's.
Well, yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, that would be a good day for Stefano. So if you see here, Greg, right now, Forés has kind of closed that gap back in. So it looks like he's able to control it with him. 46.9s, 46.8s that time through. So they're already about 6 tenths off their fastest. 46.3 was the quickest lap of the race that we saw from Mesa early on, and he was 6 tenths off that time through. Looking back through this field here, you're looking at 4th, 5th, 6th. Doesn't look like these guys have really anything at all. They're all in the 47s from Ty Scott back there to Mazziata. So unless this race starts to get to the point where the leaders come back to him, it looks like this group here just doesn't quite have that pace to run up front with the guys in front.
11.5 laps to go. Supersport race number 1. Mesa leads Forés. Scott in 3rd. Hobbs, Hayes, falling into the clutches of Jake Lewis, Mazziata, David Anthony in 8th. Schultz in 9th, and Nassani in 10th spot, just ahead of Damian Jagaloff. And it looks like Scott clearly, Jason, is making some moves. Teague Hobbs in sector number 1 has set his fastest split of that sector, as Jake Lewis, chasing down Josh Hayes.
And that's what you got to see Teague Hobbs. It's good to see him rebound a little bit in that first split. I mean, 3 tenths on the guy in front of him, his teammate Ty Scott. But has the gap gotten a little bit too big, as Ty Scott continues to try to chew away at this gap in front of him, He's just basically ran the same 2 splits as the leaders, but it looks like he's pulled up a little bit here in this 3rd split. So we'll see if we can see if he's closed it down from 0.7. Yeah, he's now, Greg, at 0.5, and he's under a second of the leader. So Ty Scott that time with the fastest lap between the 3 of them. Teague Hobbs and Josh Hayes and Jake Lewis all jump back into the 46s, albeit high. The lap times are showing that these guys that are just off this 3 guys at the front can run the pace, but man, that gap's a little big. Still 11 laps to go, though.
Looking at Josh Hayes, who during practice and qualifying, Jay, I think you and I both kind of noted that Hayes hasn't had the pace that he normally has. He's very familiar with this race course. I mean, he was here last weekend doing endurance racing.
And I spoke with him in Park Fermi right after qualifying this morning, and he told me the places that he's struggling, Greg, are coming up out of turn 5 and even the last corner. The uphill sections of the track where you have to accelerate, he's struggling getting the power to the ground. And so for the number 4, he knows he's working around a couple things. Now, these are the kind of races that you see Josh Hayes kind of grind out these middle laps and not let the leaders get too far away. And he's going to start to charge as he goes up underneath Teague Hobbs. That is typical Josh right there. He just made a big commitment early to go through on Teague Hobbs. Now he's going to set his sights off on the guys in front of him. Hannah?
As Josh Hayes just made his way around Teague Hobbs, I was talking to Teague a little bit earlier, and after having some success this season and feeling like he's found his rhythm, I'm sure he's, not feeling the best in the position that he's in right now. I talked to him, he said he had a rough start in practice and was feeling off the pace. He wasn't getting the feeling out of the bike that he needed, but they made some changes for qualifying, and he said he was much closer to where he wanted to be, but he's still looking for a bit more time. He knows he's got some time in the 2nd sector, and if he can clean up the 1st sector and string together a whole lap, he feels like he has some good race pace, especially toward the end. We'll see if he can overtake Josh Hayes once more.
And speaking of overtakes, it's Xavi Flores who goes to the front. And you're wondering about that yellow livery. That, of course, is because on the Warhorse HSBK Racing Ducati team, it's John Deere Commercial is the title sponsor for the team, and that's where this yellow and black comes from. And Xavi Flores flying the flag for the John Deere Commercial sponsor this weekend, and he goes to the front. We'll see if Mesa push too hard. And maybe, Jason, if you're new to road racing, there's no radio communication in the helmet. These riders either look over their shoulder, which we don't recommend, or you get a pit board at one particular section of the racetrack, and that's where you get your information. So Flores knows.
Looks like it's into the chicane, and Flores just went down the inside, got through on Mesa, and it was probably just as much of a surprise move for Mesa as it was when Mesa made the pass on Flores down into turn 5. Those are going to be 2 places where it gets really narrow, probably the 2 most narrow places on the track, and these guys have managed to find room between the 2 of them to make that pass. Now, it's also allowed Ty Scott to close into the back of these guys, so for Ty Scott, seeing these 2 guys dice it up in front of him is exactly what he wants to see. As you can see, Mesa has a great run out of turn 14. He's able to get that Kawasaki and turn it a little tighter at the bottom. And as they come down into that chicane, this is where that pass happened a lap ago. You can see Mesa just gets in there a little bit tighter, gets the bike in and turned through there really, really nicely. But for Ty Scott, look at the 77 here. Oh, ooh. So the 77, that looks like it's maybe turn 14 there.
Jay, one thing I noticed in the chicane when it comes to Mesa is the way he was approaching that chicane, getting it sideways and rhythmic. He wasn't able to have the exact same rhythm as Xavi Flores leading him through there, because Flores approaches that chicane, not necessarily line choice-wise, but just in the attitude of the motorcycle differently.
But also, Greg, it's so one-lined that you can't see into there. So Stefano could just be using that line in that particular lap or the laps behind him just to get some better visual through the middle of that turn, because it is so one line there that it's, like I say, it's difficult to see. They're running over an inside curbing, and so for Mesa, it might just be something as easy as visual, but you're right, there's 2 different distinct lines there as Xavi looks over his shoulder again and sees the 37 still breathing right down his neck.
Yeah, but he was getting from his pit board, I would have to imagine his team was letting him know what Ty Scott's position was, and I think that was probably part of the urgency for Xavi Flores to push to take over the lead, because Ty Scott is on the pipe. Now, he does have the fastest lap of the race. That was all the way back on lap number 3. That was a 1:46.164 by Ty Scott on the Vision Wheel M4X Star Suzuki. However, Xavi Flores, his fastest lap of the race was just a couple ticks behind that at a 1:46.410. Last time by, Xavi did a 146.946. So the pace is right there. It's as hot, only a couple tenths off of the fastest laps of the race. This deep in the race, we're going to have 8.5 laps to go here in Supersport race number 1 with Xavi Forés leading. This is the most I've seen him look over his shoulder, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that he's looking to see not just if he's dropped Mesa at all, but he's also looking to see how many people are kind of forming in behind him. So I think that right now we got a red flag, Greg. We got a red flag on track. Looking at my screen, it looks like yeah.
We're getting reports that the 62 bike has gone down. So with that red flag, that means all race stop. There's a look at the motorcycle. So red flag out means that the race is going to stop. And we are not quite at the halfway point of this Supersport race number 1. Xavi Forés was leading the way over Mesa, Scott, Josh Hayes in 4th. And of course, when the red flag came out, the majority of the field is in a position where they're already making their way into pit lane. Teague Hobbs is in pit lane, Lewis, Mazziato, David Anthony, Schultz, Nassani. And here under red flag rules with race stoppage, MotoAmerica is going to, and the AMA FIM North America, they're going to assess the situation on the racetrack, see what they need to do to get this race going again. There'll be a grid procedure. No tires allowed to be changed, but you can do everything else. We'll step away. When we come back, we'll get this red flag sorted out here at Pit Race.
Well, as the field makes its way down into pit lane here for this red flag, 62, Nathan Seathaler out of Raleigh, North Carolina on the Seathaler Racing Kawasaki, the rider having the off out there, Roger. And the first thing that popped into my mind is we're literally almost at half distance here. We talked earlier about Xavi going with a completely different direction on that front tire, and he had been pushing and pushing Mesa, got through. Mesa wasn't letting him go, but this track is a bit abrasive. Is this maybe a little bit of a gift in a way for assuming they get a good start for Stefano and Tyler Scott, and it's a big break for Joshua Hayes, who in those last few laps was easily the fastest guy on the track.
Yeah, big break for Josh Hayes. You go back to the last couple laps, running the same lap times as the leaders, but 2.5 seconds back.
Yeah.
So now he gets to restart there, 4th, and then be right there with the leaders and get a better start. First start, he's a little bit further back, didn't get a great start and had to come through the pack.
Let's take a look at the start once again, and you can see Mesa getting a really good launch, but so did Tyler from back in the pack just a little bit, and looked for a minute like he was going to go to the lead, and then Xavi just said, hello. It was a really good move by Xavi.
Xavi just let off the brakes going down in there to turn 1, but Stefano had the momentum where he was able to ride around the outside.
And we did see Xavi go to the lead for a minute, and then Stefano, we're going to see it coming up here, he put on a move that said not so fast. I mean, this was hugely aggressive, wasn't it?
Really aggressive move. You don't see hardly anybody making passes down into there, but Stefano was able to make it and make it clean.
Yeah, it stood Xavi up for just a second there, and that was enough, but that started to bring, obviously you got Teague right there in the 3rd spot and Tyler in 4th, but Tyler then started uncorking some laps and ran this lead duo down.
Yeah, once Tyler moved into 3rd and had some, clear track, he was able, a couple tenths a lap, just slowly reel those top 2 guys down. And, before the red flag, he had himself on right there on the group.
Watching right there, you can see that Josh Hayes did not get the start he wanted. And again, he gets a break here. But if he was waiting for that soft tire, maybe he was waiting for the heat, because he started to be throwing down some really good laps here right before that red flag. So it'd be interesting to see, does this stoppage help the guys with the softer fronts, or is it going to work against them here? But boy, these two guys, for a minute there, it looked like they were gone.
Yeah, and they really were, like you said, beginning of that race. I mean, the lap times from a dead stop was pretty incredible, and it was just luckily that Tyler was able to do a couple chip away at it. Sometimes as a young guy like Tyler, you move into that spot, you try to make it all up in one lap. But he showed, some maturity, just chipping away.
Yep, he just put his head down, got it done. And so, as we have this early red flag, Michael Hill has worked his way down into the pit area. Let's see if we can find out what's happening from his point of view.
Yeah, down here in the pit lane, just literally a few meters away from Xavi Forés. As I said, one finger on that championship, and he'd put himself in such a good position, hadn't he? He was right in the mix, had just taken the lead with a really nice move down into that new chicane. He's just talking to Simone down here. No problem, as MotoAmerica now just advising the teams what is going on. We're not going to go and stick a microphone in the rider's face if he's in the middle of a discussion. So as we've already said, you're not allowed to change tyres. They are allowed to make other little changes, but at the moment I can tell you there's been no change to the number 12 of Xavi Forés. All they've done is put the tyre warmers on. Xavi's come in, he's taken a little drink of water, and now he's talking to Simone, but he seems quite happy and quite relaxed. A little bit further up the pit lane, we have, of course, the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki team. They were also very well placed with Tyler Scott in hot contention. He's just sat across the other side of the wall. So too, Teague Hobbs just sat down here talking to his performance coach, Ethan Chaplock, who we've spoken to a couple of times through this season. Let's just see if we can maybe get a little word with Tyler if we can. Again, it's one of those situations, isn't it? It's not like a normal qualifying session where we've got lots of time and we can kind of just be a little bit cheeky. These guys are in the middle of a race. They're going to get back out on track, and they've got to pick up where they left off. Tyler's helmet going on. Teague looking quite calm, cool, relaxed. A little bit of fuel just went into the 79, which of course is allowed, so no issues there. Let's just keep walking up the pit lane and just try and show you some of the other riders down here. So we've looked at 3 of the top 6. One of the other riders that was very much in the top 6 is Jake Lewis. And again, another rider that's just looking really calm, really cool. He's got a lot of experience, of course. He's not going to panic at this stage. The Disrupt Racing GSXR 750 with the tyre warmers on. And yeah, Jake just looking quite calm and cool. Can we get a quick word with you, Jake? Are you happy to talk? Thank you, mate. I don't want to just stick a microphone in your face. Obviously, a red flag situation is never good. What's going through your mind right now?
I mean, it's a 5-lap restart, so it's just going to be a sprint. So, I mean, just got to try to get a good start and be aggressive. You know, I think it's going to bunch everyone back up. You know, those front 3 guys were kind of gone, and Josh got around myself and Teague and was rolling pretty dang good. So just try to latch on and just be aggressive and do the best I can.
Okay, we'll let you get back to the team talk. Like I said, thanks for talking to us, Jake. And again, what Jake is talking about, a 5-lap sprint race. So basically, ladies and gents, watching on MotoAmerica Live Plus, ignore what you've just seen. That means nothing at all. It's not like the old days where they have aggregate races where they're going to add laps 1 to 8 with the remaining laps. That doesn't happen in motorcycle racing anymore. It's a 2-part race now. So basically, part 1 is basically, in essence, setting the grid. So it's going to be Forés from Mesa and Tyler Scott on the front row of the grid because they were first, second and third respectively at the time that the red flag came out. Once the lights go out, as Jake said, it's a 5-lap sprint. Whichever rider crosses the line first at the end of those 5 laps will take the 25 championship points and the race winner's trophy. It's as simple as that. So it makes it a lot easier for us commentators. It makes it a lot easier as well for those watching on TV at home as well. David Anthony, Aussie Dave, was very much in the mix, just running outside of the top 6. And again, Dave, can we get a quick word? Well, we have a little bit of a delay. I was just talking to one of your old buddies, Malcolm Ashley, who has managed to work his way in. Yeah, I mean, they let anybody in these days, but obviously, joking aside, you've got a job to do, a 5-lap sprint race. Does that change things for you?
I mean, it'll be better for me. I blew that chicane on the second lap, I think, first lap, so I dropped back from there, so I was off that group. But yeah, it's great for me because I can get back on it and be back in the fight, hopefully.
Obviously, it does change things because, as I was just explaining to the people watching at home, there's no aggregate racing anymore. So also as a rider, you're not having to worry about finding 0.4 of a second or 0.6 of a second. It's just a straight race. So from your perspective as well, just full gas, elbows out?
Yeah, exactly. And you're showing your age there. Aggregate racing, that's been going for years. But yeah, it's good. I mean, for us, all of us, we're all pretty aggressive, and there's quite a few that are on pace. So it should be pretty entertaining 5 laps, I think.
Absolutely. And talking about my age, I'm still only 21. It's all the injections, mate. It's the Botox.
Yeah, exactly.
Thanks. Thanks, mate. Good stuff. Let's keep a little walk on there. As I said, we are under a little bit longer delay than we thought, just while the track is cleaned up and everything gets ready. Jarrett Nassani down here, Max Flinder's dad down here, of course. We're talking about Supersport. Let's have a quick chat to Martin, who is Max Flinder's father. Obviously, you guys are just getting into that sort of 30-minute window, building up ready for the Superbike race, and then all your plans now get stopped when we get a red flag.
Yeah, it's. I hope the guy's all right, by the way, who's gone to medical, but we're ready for it. We're ready. We're sitting poised.
Poised, I like that. I like that. Just been told in my ear that we've got about 3 minutes to go. So everybody else now down here with the helmet on. Jarrett Nassani with the helmet on. Joe Limandri Jr. Also, hey George, how are you? Owen Williams as well with the helmet on. Damian Jigoloff. Yeah, let's go. Here we go.
MotoAmerica Supersport coverage is brought to you by Dunlop, the official tire of the MotoAmerica Championship Series. By Steel Commander Corp, a leading steel building manufacturer offering expertise, innovation, and a dedication to quality. And by Geico Motorcycle. Visit geico.com to see how easy covering your ride can be.
Let's take a look at race 1 highlights so far under red flag conditions. Jason Pridmore, take it away.
Yeah, it was a great start, like we said, from Ty Scott, but it was Xavi Flores that was going to lead them down into turn 1, but it was only 3 turns later when Mesa decided he'd had enough. Did you see here? Turn 3 down through 4, and this is a very, very tight pass for Mesa as he just decides to shove it up the inside of Xavi Flores on the 12 and goes past him. Now Ty Scott does the same thing a few laps later to his teammate Teague Hobbs, and then Josh Hayes, probably about 5 laps later, does the same thing but in turn 12. And then Xavi Flores takes to the front as they headed into the chicane. And this was the battle that we were going to start to see. Xavi Flores, Mesa, and Ty Scott closing in until we saw this. Great. Nathan Seethaler falls off in turn 6. Happy to see him up and okay. You see him here. He's having a smile with the guys. They put him on the stretcher, Greg, but it looked like he was going to be fine, hopefully.
All right, so the Raleigh, North Carolina resident should be okay as they handle him. And like you're saying, Jay, he's all smiles there. That was definitely a hard hit on the noodle. Thank goodness for his protective equipment.
Yeah, that was a big hit, and really happy to see him up and all right.
Tons of fans out here at Pit Race as riders make their way onto the racetrack. Jason, it's going to be a 5-lap restart here at Pit Race for part number 2 of race number 1 in Supersport. Let's check in with Hannah.
I touched base with Josh Hayes just before he pulled out moments ago, and I said, what does this restart mean for you? And he said, it's going to be a lot harder. We're on used tires now. We've got these 5 laps, and he had already made good work of the field getting around some of the other riders to put himself in a pretty good position. And he said he's not sure if it's going to be able to be as easy as it was the last time around. It's really difficult to pass here, and on those worn tires, it's going to definitely be a bigger challenge than it was for the first start of this race.
Yeah, and in terms of the restart, you know, Hannah, he started in 5th position on row number 2. And on this restart, he'll be in 4th place, so not much of an advantage. But as we look at the riders on the front, Jason, the R0, which is the softest tire available from Dunlop, Mesa chose a 0 for the front, an R3 for the rear. Teague Hobbs is on 3 front, 3 rear. Xavi Flores, though, on the hardest front that we've seen on the front 2 rows, an R5 with an R3. He might be pretty good. Ty Scott and Josh Hayes on that R0 front, R3 rear, and Jake Lewis on an R3, R3. Left part of your screen, of course, the red flag rules on how we're going to do the restart. It'll be a quick start procedure. Jason, tell us about that.
Quick start procedure means there'll be 1 member from each team over onto the track, and they're going to show their rider where their grid spot is. So the riders will come through, go to their grid spot, and once the field gets set, they'll get ready to send them out for one more lap, Greg, warm-up lap, and then we'll go green after that. So 5 lap. You know, when you talk about Josh and you hear him saying some of the things he says about tires, I mean, the experience level he has, you know, now it's going to be super key for him to get the best start that he can get and get up there with those front 3. You know, it's, you look at the lap times he was doing it towards the end there, a lot of the 3 or 4 riders that were not in the top 3 were starting to run that same pace. So for Hayes, you know, it's going to be 5 laps. Let's get a good start and try to get stuck in and get in behind these 3 guys that were leading the race to start with.
Yeah, so I think all the focus for the Squirt Hunter Yamaha R6 rider Hayes is going to be getting a good start.
And I like where he's coming from here, where he's actually positioned himself on the track is the outside part of the track. And if people start bottling up down the inside, you know, generally you can trust the riders that are just in front of him. I mean, these guys are all world-class riders that are just in front of him. It would be a little bit sketchier if it was 7th row back or something, but coming from that outside of the 2nd row, he's going to be following Xavi Flores off the line. It really actually weighs into Josh's favor, I think, a little bit here, as opposed to even being in the middle or the inside for sure. He's in a good spot.
And there were, before the red flag, a host of infractions in terms of time penalties assessed to a variety of riders. And that, of course, affects their grid position. So, for instance, the 52 of David Anthony, they added 1.1 seconds to his time. Hayden Schultz had 1.4 added. Damian Jugaloff had 2.2. So, and all those are for track cuts, and we have to imagine that has to do with really the chicane.
It's a very, very tight chicane here, and you know, it's a math problem.
Yeah,
it is what it is. It's going to be so many guys or ladies that are gonna have trouble getting through that chicane at some point in the race. Maybe, especially if somebody's coming up there underneath you, you get compromised pretty easily, and it's a much safer route to just pick the bike up and go straight than it is to try to tip it in there.
And so with those time penalties, they will not carry over to the second part of the race. They're only affecting their grid position in terms of how it finished in part number 1. So if there's no other track cut penalties assessed to these riders, so a rider like David Anthony, who's now gridded up in the 9th place position, without any time penalty on our timing and scoring board, it's like you're free to race for whatever position you're normally going to race in. So that's kind of the way it works. As we have a look at riders on their warm-up lap. Now, of course, we mentioned before the break that there are no tire changes, but everything else was wide open. So the teams had the ability to make adjustments, add fuel, everything except they could not change their tire, and that's what Josh Hayes is talking about it. Hannah, how are you?
I'm good. It's beautiful out here right now as these guys are making their way back to the grid. But I wanted to mention, a lot of the riders that I spoke to mentioned that, you know, lap traffic was a concern toward the end of the race because there are so many riders in the field. Catching back up to them would be kind of difficult to navigate, and it would potentially come down to who could get through the lap traffic the best. There's 31 riders restarting this race, but with only 5 laps to go, that's much less of a concern for our leaders.
Yeah, that's a great point, Hannah, too. You really got to think for Mesa and Xavi Flores and Ty Scott, they had kind of gotten away, and now they got the field behind them again. I wouldn't be surprised, Greg, if you see that number 70 lead it into turn 1 with the start he got on the first time around. The 70 is going to be the guy I think they're going to have to beat down to turn 1, but yeah, getting back to it with these bigger grids as we're finding here at Pittsburgh, there'll be no lap traffic, but it's going to be a 5-lap sprint for these riders now.
Yeah, and we know that this racetrack that's hosted some club racing, very familiar with 5-lap sprint races. So this is just go for it. No need to save anything you got in the tank. Get after it. Race number 1, Supersport. Part number 2 after a restart. Xavi Flores is your rider closest to turn number 1. So here we go. Revs are up. 5 laps to decide this one. A good launch from the front row, and Ty Scott on the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki trying to go up the inside like Jason said, but no, he'll fall back. Hayes on the outside of 2 Yamahas.
That's what we expected to see from Hayes, and interesting because Ty Scott got such a good launch. T. Hobbs tried to go with him and around the outside, couldn't make it, and it kind of blocked Josh out. So Xavi Flores leads the way into turn 3-4 section for that first time. So it's getting a little bit racy back to look at Jake Lewis. So kind of the guy that got shuffled back. Josh Hayes got a good launch, Greg, got himself in the spot I thought he needed to be, but then just kind of got pinched, and he's back to 6th now.
Yeah, so Lewis around. Josh Hayes takes the spot, but all eyes on the front, Xavi Flores. Of course, World Endurance experience, racing for Ducati in World Endurance this season. So if there's one rider who's going to be comfortable and familiar with used tires, it'll be Xavi Flores. Of course, Josh Hayes doing endurance racing here in the United States as well. But of course, original tires that they start on.
It's the same thing we saw at the beginning. And you watch Xavi as he comes out of turn 5, he moves over to the right to kind of let Stefano know that, hey, there's not going to be room for you to go by me there. And now we're through turn 14. Let's see if Mesa gets a good run out of here. And see if he can do anything with Xavi as they get down into the chicane. Looks like Jake Lewis is also trying to make a big move back there for 4th, as you can see him go up underneath Teague Hobbs. So the Disrupt Racing GSXR 750 of Jake Lewis, he is kind of the guy that's won out so far on this shortened 5-lap sprint, as he's got to the back of Ty Scott now on another GSXR 750.
And Jay, he made a pass into the chicane. We haven't seen a lot of passing into the chicane. That really takes a lot of guts, because you mentioned it earlier, you can't really see if you have a rider in front of you. Late on the brakes is Xavi Forés. A notion up the inside for Tyler Cycles, Stefano Mesa. He doesn't get that job done, as all these riders trying to figure out how the condition of their tires is after the heat cycle restart race. They've got it sorted out now with 4 laps remaining in race 1, part number 2 in Supersport here at Pit Race.
And this is where I was talking about. Mesa's bike's very, very strong out of here. Xavi runs a little bit tighter line up the hill. You're going to see when he gets to the top here, as they exit this turn, Xavi just makes a little move over to the right here and tries to make it to block Mesa from going down the inside. And it's just enough to make it to where it's going to make it difficult on Mesa to do that. So, but look again, through these S's, Mesa is right up the back of the number 12. And you see Ty Scott, Jake Lewis still holding on to that 4th place position.
Of course, Stefano Mesa on that Kawasaki ZX6R. That's part of our older generation of motorcycles here in the next generation Supersport. And with the Yamaha R6 being the baseline for performance, and the Kawasaki ZX6R being a 636, of course, part of the balancing is adding 3 kilograms of weight to that motorcycle, to the Tyler Cycles motorcycle, which is also, they can put it anywhere that they want, but that's also a consideration when looking at the balancing of these next generation and new generation motorcycles. As Xavi Forés on that Ducati Panigale V2, that's a next gen bike.
Mesa has a look over his shoulder just to see who's back there. Now, he's in the draft here. He might be able to do something with Forés by the time they get down to turn 1. He's up alongside of him enough, Greg, where I think he can try. Now, Forés is late on the brakes there. When they came past our vantage point here from our booth, Mesa actually had half a bike length on Forés. So Forés just held his line and kept that thing wide open. And look what it's done. It's allowed Ty Scott now to try to do something with Mesa. Not quite close enough. This is what Jake Lewis needs to see. You see him back there on that fluorescent orange colored Disrupt Racing GSX-R 750. He's doing everything he can to just get to the back of these 3 riders. We've seen him very strong. We saw that aerial shot just now of the chicane. That's where Jake Lewis made the pass on Teague Hobbs. Also, Josh Hayes made a pass on Teague Hobbs as they went into turn 12 a lap earlier. And look at Lewis is now on the back of Ty Scott as they head down into these S's.
Jake Lewis led the first practice session yesterday here at Pit Race, and he has proven that he has got some serious speed on that Disrupt Racing GSX-R 750. As for Xavi Forés, a couple of corners ago, Jay noticed a little bit of rear spin coming out of that Ducati Panigale V2. No traction control on this motorcycle, the way it's configured. So all the TC is coming from the right wrist of Xavi Forés. But Jay, the biggest thing for Xavi is that he feels with the next generation balancing that the Ducati V2 doesn't quite have the acceleration of some of the other bikes in the field. So he's designed this motorcycle and set this motorcycle up to take advantage of his braking prowess. He's an outstanding braker. And so the question is, do these other 3 riders behind him have the weapon to fight Xavi Forés as we come down to getting close to 2 laps to go here in race number 1, part 2.
And I feel like this is Mesa's best shot to like maybe make a pass and make it stick is going to be to get a draft down this front straightaway and time it a little bit better. This time Forés moves over to the left, just like he's been doing out of turn 5. He's been moving over to the right up there. This time he moves over to the left, and you can see Mesa looks like he's got a little bit of pace through turn 1 that he's not able to use. All these bikes look tremendous up over the hill. Ty Scott looks like he's down the inside of both of them, but still cannot quite get past that Ducati.
And braking is so technical and so tricky here at Pit Race because of all the elevation changes, and it just looks like Xavi Forés has got the field covered. But everybody else is going to school on Xavi to see if he's got any weakness.
Look at that thing spinning there, and Mesa again trying to do something here with Forés. It's going to be one of those moves, Greg, where, and it's there, here it comes. It's going to be one of those moves where you get down the inside, you might run a little bit wide, but Mesa does a really good job of keeping that ZX6 36 in the spot that it needs to be in.
So good.
Yeah,
so
really
good by the Tyler Cycles Racing rider. He knew exactly the way the corners flow together and what he needed to do to put himself in front. Now the question is, does the number 12 have anything to fight with? Or is he going to start ratcheting back? Will the Vision Wheel M4 X-Star Suzuki of Ty Scott take advantage of that? If he's got a chance to win it, he's got to get it done soon because we're running out of corners.
Well, this was a spot that we saw Forez go down the inside of Mesa into this chicane. Let's see if Mesa does anything here to, yeah, he gets in there early. See how quick he's got that thing turned in? That's why the bike's backing in the way it is, because he's giving it an input to get it down to that curbing as early as he can while pulling on that lever. The front profile of that tire is getting bigger, and that's when that bike starts to back in. As you see, Mesa now is trying to get out of this last corner. He gets that bike a little sideways again. Now Ty Scott is going to be able to do something with Forez on this front straightaway as Mesa has pulled away ever so slightly. Ty Scott is down the outside of Forez, but Forez is going to hold that position. But Ty Scott will be in a good spot here to draft past that Ducati on the run up to turn 3.
Mesa streaking away from the rest of the field. Ty Scott desperate to do something with Xavi Forez and try to figure out how to close the gap. Forez, so good on the brakes, is able to make up a couple bike lengths. This might not be over, as Xavi Forez has got something, and Teague Hobbs right behind him, 2 and 5th.
Teague Hobbs got back past Josh Hayes and has started to make inroads on these guys in front of him. 46.8 that last time by for the 79 of Teague Hobbs. So he's now trying to get himself on the back of this leading quartet just a little bit too late in the game. I think Mason now, Greg, as well as he goes through these next series of turns, he's going to be able to probably hold on to this. Forrest is going to do everything he can to hold on to the back of the 37.
It just feels like there's a lack of acceleration grip right now for Forez compared to Mesa. So Mesa trying to hold on to this on this final lap of competition here in race number 1 of Supersport. Up over the hill they come.
He's closed it back in again a little bit.
He has.
He's closed it back in. Now, this is where Mesa is going to, you'll see it again, Greg. He'll tip in a little bit early. He'll get those back shifts done, going back through the gearbox. Look how tight he is. That bike will back in ever so slightly. Gets him out of shape. Now, just concentrate on getting the exit out of there. Move over to the right a little bit. You can see and get a good run out of here.
Mesa with a very strong motorcycle off the corner and a good tire underneath him. Looks to be in a good position. He's now struggling for grip on the right side. But the final corner onto the front straightaway we go. And behind the bubble, Stefano Mesa to the checkered flag will take victory by 0.18 of a second over Xavi Forez as Mesa sideways into turn number 1 gets it done here in Supersport. Only our 4th race winner in Supersport this season, even though Xavi Forez put in the fight of his life.
Wow.
A 1:46.422, fastest lap of the race on the last lap.
Amazing.
By Xavi Forez. Ty Scott in 3rd, Jake Lewis in 4th, just 0.3 of a second behind. Teague Hobbs in 5th, Josh Hayes back in 6th. Now we're going to take a look at these points and see how it's all jumbled up in Xavi Forez's favor. So for Xavi Forez, he loses 5 points to Mesa. So the difference between Xavi and Mesa in the championship will be 95 points.
Wow.
But Mesa, of course, was back a little bit. He had a 100-point disadvantage coming into this thing in 4th in the championship. But it's Josh Hayes loses 10 points to Xavi Forez. Ty Scott will lose 4 points. There's Josh Hayes' wife, Melissa Paris, owner of the Wagbar MP13 racing team. A couple racers in competition this weekend. When you look at the Tytler Cycles, Kawasaki ZX6R rider, Mesa. Jay, this has been coming.
It's been coming, man, and it's so nice to see. What a great birthday present to himself, as we heard Hannah say earlier. So for Mesa, yeah, I mean, it's pretty incredible that we haven't seen him, win more. He's there every single weekend, and I remember some of the fights that he put up at MotoAmerica and other places. And we say it all the time, how much this guy rides, how much he races, and it was a great move for Tytlers to bring him on, and he's got himself a victory.
Mesa, Forez, Scott, Lewis, Hobbs, Hayes, Anthony Mazziato in 7th, Hayden Schultz in 8th place, Nassani in 9th, Carl Sotis in your top 10. Let's take a look at the race highlights, Jay, from what just happened.
Yeah, again, it was those 3 guys on the front row, and Ty, this is the first start, I believe, and early on in this race, before we had our red flag, Forez, Mesa, and Scott, you're going to see Mesa do this pass again as they head down this very steep hill here at Pittsburgh International Raceway. Gets up underneath Forez, Flores would then turn that favor in the chicane. A few laps later, Ty Scott goes under his teammate, and here's that pass I was talking about. Flores makes that pass through a very tight section of the track, that chicane. Then we had a big crash from the 62. Was up and okay. We got the red flag out, so the front row were the top three from the race just previous. Flores gets out front again, Greg. And Mesa, though, was just trying to figure out where he was going to be able to make this pass. He would eventually make it. You see him try to get down the inside of turn 1, wasn't able to do it, but got a good enough run out of 5 where he was able to do something there. And then you see here, Greg, he holds off to the finish for the 37, a great win.
He's got to be celebrating that. We'll have more coverage on the other side of this commercial break. Don't go anywhere.
Happy birthday, Stefano Mesa. Man, what a way to celebrate, and what a ride. He was absolutely not going to, it almost seemed like he was going to refuse to lose, so to speak, here with some of those passes he made. He's been so on form this weekend, bouncing back from a tough Brainerd and doing it in absolutely exceptional style, Roger.
Yeah, great ride by Stefano. It's great to see him, works really hard at his program, and, just coming out here and getting that win. That's what it's all about. And I was mentioning to you during the break, now that means this year we're talking about the next gen rules.
Yeah.
Kawasaki's won, Ducati's won, Suzuki, Yamaha's won. 4 different manufacturers has won in Supersport this year.
Yeah, I mean, obviously those next-gen rules are working. Obviously, with a brand-new sort of format like that, you do a little tweaking on it, but you can't argue with the competitiveness. And, I mean, you look just in the finishing order, top 3 different manufacturers with Kawasaki for Mesa, Flores on the Duke, and Tyler Scott on the Suzuki. So this huge crowd here enjoying some absolutely incredible Supersport racing.
Results from Supersport race number 1. Mesa over Flores and Scott. You like a Kawasaki, Ducati, Suzuki. And then Jake Lewis ahead of Teague Hobbs, Josh Hayes, Mazziato, Schultz. And let's get right down to Handelope.
The crowd behind us was just singing happy birthday to Stefano, and what a great birthday gift to yourself, your first win of the season. How were you able to get around Xavi and ultimately pull a gap there a little bit for this win?
Man, I'll tell you, what a race. That's the best race I've ever had in my life. I put everything I had into that. It was amazing battling with Xavi, finally going head-to-head and having some clean racing. We've been battling some issues since I totaled the bike back at the Ridge, but I think we're back. The bike's feeling great. Thanks to my Tyler Cycles, my crew chief, all my family, all my friends that are here. It's just great to be up here, get a win for the team. We're missing Michael, the team owner, and Haley, but this one goes to them, missing them, and glad I could get one for them.
Trying to refocus after that restart, the second start of the race. You had been behind Xavi for a few laps prior. Did that give you an idea of an opportunity to try and make your way around him?
Yeah, definitely. After the red flag, I thought it was like a favorite for me. That I do a lot of sprint racing when I have time, so I'm very good at it. I'm good for about 8 laps, So it was great to get out there and. I mean, since the first lap, I was trying to put a move in this guy, and he's just so good on the brakes. I gotta go to work on my brakes. But my hat's off to him. My hat's off to Tyler too. Just great racing with these guys, and hope tomorrow's gonna be a great one as well.
Congratulations, Stefano Mesa, our race winner, and happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday to the mustache. I'm digging it. Now here are the point standings. 91 points the advantage between Xavi Flores and Ty Scott. Hayes falling back a couple of points. Mesa right there at 95. The magic number for Xavi Flores after race 2 tomorrow, Jason, is going to be...
Well, he's got to be 100 points ahead. That's how I'm looking at that, right?
Yeah,
he's got to
exactly.
be
100 points ahead, because he would win all tiebreakers with the most wins. Very interesting points battle as we get close to the end of this season. Can't wait to see how this unfolds tomorrow. A very entertaining Supersport race number 1 for Handelope and Jason Pridmore. I'm Greg White. Thank you so much for checking out our coverage. There is a lot on the line here at Pit Race for race number 2. We can't wait to see you back here under the sunny skies of Western Pennsylvania to find out What Xavi Flores, can he wrap it up tomorrow? Can't wait to find out.